do so. Uh, Duffy's program today is the War in '64, and it will focus on crucial logistical and supply issues that existed in '64. One of the things that I learned when I was studying to be a professional soldier was that amateurs study tactics. The real pros study logistics. That's how we won World War II and World War I. Is we were every factory in America that had been making rubber bands and radios turned to military. And America just out-supplied the Germans and out-fought them. But supply and logistics are so important. And Duffy, I would ask you at this time, if you would please, to come up.
Thank you, Jack, for those kind words. I don't know that I deserve them, but I do appreciate them. For some of you that have maybe seen me speak before, I'm going to do something a little bit different. I typically do not stay at the podium. I kind of wander around and dance all over the stage, but I got quite a bit of first primary sources that I want to read and get it correct. So I'm going to stay at the podium for the most part. I first of all want to thank the Bryce's Crossroads Foundation for inviting me to be part of this program today. I'm really excited about it, and I'm honored to be here and be part of this, and I'm really looking forward to the conclusion or the discussion part at the end. I think that always brings up wonderful bits of information. When this all started, Graham called me and said, would you like to come up here? And I said, absolutely. And he says, we're going to focus on the 160th anniversary of Bryce's Crossroads, 1864. So tie something in, if you can, to 1864. And I said, I can do that. And as soon as I hung up the phone, my brain already kicked in. I said, I know what I want to do. I want to take a look and see when things started really going downhill. And I think everybody's heard this question or get the answer. When did the South know the war was over? You know, I don't know if anybody knows, but I do believe that in the state of Mississippi in '64, things were going downhill. And that's what we're going to look at. What happened by the year of 1864? I'm going to take Jack's biography here. One of the books that I use quite a bit, and I'm sure many of you are very, very familiar with this, but it is a wonderful 2-volume set, and that's Mississippi and the Confederacy as They Saw It, and it was edited by John K. Bettersworth. If you've not ever used that series, I really encourage it. It's a wonderful set of primary sources, letters, diaries, newspaper accounts. As all of you know that at the outbreak of the war in the early 1860s, Mississippi is one of the wealthiest states in the Union. And looking at the first 2 years of the war, I'm going to start out by using a newspaper article, and this was written in the Jackson Daily Southern Crisis. It was dated March 21st of 1863. And the headline on the newspaper is almost exclusively drawn from the state. The subsistence, the clothing, the camp equipment for a tremendous army, Pemberton's, had almost exclusively been drawn from the state of Mississippi. And this too, when several of her most populous and productive counties had been under the control of the enemy. Mississippi manufacturers had all but nearly the materials used for the Army in the whole department. A brief mention of the Mississippi factories, many of which have sprung up almost like magic. We will not be uninteresting to the readers. The Jackson manufactory makes 5,000 garments weekly. The material is cut out in the city by experienced and industrious tailors, distributed over the county in Hines and adjoining counties to be made. Soldiers' wives and destitute families are supplied with work first, then enabling them to support themselves while lending a helping hand to the cause. Similar factories in Bankston, Choctaw County, Columbus, Enterprise, Natchez, and Woodville made up to 5,000 uniforms per week. That's amazing. Hat factories in Jackson and Columbus made 200 hats per day. We also have manufacturing at Jackson, which turns out 50 blankets per day. The Pemberton Works at Enterprise and Dixie Works in Canton makes not less than 60 wagons and ambulances per week. These factories are all new, established within a few months past, and their capacity is being constantly increased. The chief quartermaster has now private contracts with parties in the state which will supply 8,000 pairs of shoes per week. Arrangements are now being made to start an exclusive government shoe shop in Jackson with a capacity of 6,000 pairs of shoes per month. The tanneries in the state are sufficient to tan all the leather they can procure. The most extensive tannery in the Confederacy is situated in Magnolia and supplies 600 hides daily. Tent manufacturers from Mississippi, the Mississippi cloth, are the best in the Confederacy, and enough of them are made in Jackson and Columbus to supply the Army. All of the horses, mules, wagons, and harness for transportation of the Army have been supplied from Mississippi. Hard to believe, isn't it? Now, you know that if I came up here wearing an red artillery jacket, I'm going to have to work artillery into this program somehow. A.B. Reading operated a foundry in Vicksburg, and when the war started, he immediately offered his services to the state of Mississippi. The offer was accepted, and A.B. Reading Foundry started producing cannon and projectiles. By the end of May 1862, Reading had completed over 50 cannon and thousands of artillery projectiles. There are only 3 foundries in the entire Confederacy that went over 100, with Tredegar being about 1,100. A.B. Reading is one of those cannon foundries that most people don't know of or heard very little of, but he only worked 18 months before the factory had to be moved. If A.B. Reading would have continued on at that pace through the war, he would have been only behind Tredegar in the production of cannon. The Paxton Foundry in Vicksburg was just across the street, and they were also making artillery projectiles, along with Briarfield Arsenal in Columbus. By 1864, none of these facilities were still in operation. So they started out with a tremendous start, but they obviously, after Vicksburg, things changed drastically. Let's look at 1864. I'm reading to you from the Greensboro Southern Motive, May 7th, 1864. Things have changed. It appears that these families, the name of the topic or the headline of this newspaper article is called Folks at Home. The folks at home. It appears that these families are to support their brothers and sons and their husbands who are in the Army, when it took all they could make to support their families when they were at home. There are but very few Negroes in the county, and the people will suffer if something is not done to prevent it. Already have some of destitute families feel the effects of the approaching crisis. Corn can scarcely be bought at any price. And as far as meat, we do not know of a pound for sale. How can we expect long to have an army of true veterans in the field if their wives and little ones at home are without anything to eat. So we went from a very prosperous first 2 years of the war, and all of a sudden in 64, we can't feed people. Another article, same newspaper, the Greensboro Southern Motive, also dated May of 64. The name of the article, the headline in the newspaper was, "Ma, I want a piece of bread." There is scarcely a day goes by, but we see 3 or 4 ladies come to town for the purpose of getting from the commissioner a little meal or meat with which to feed their almost starving children. By owing to the impossibility of the commission procuring meat, these poor women are compelled to go home without it, and frequently are told, without any corn or meal. Thus, the poor women, the families of soldiers, are tormented by the agonizing cry of their children by calling for, "Ma, I want a piece of bread." Think of that mother's feeling when she has not nor knows how to get any bread. The commissioners have tried in vain to buy meat, but cannot neither for love nor money, because it is not to be had. So we are now in 64 in Mississippi, and our families can't eat. They're starving. The kids can't, how I can imagine what those mothers went through to try and feed them. And the question, I guess, is, how long can you hold on? And you say, well, we'll just tie the knot a little tighter and we'll hang on. Well, there's 2 other events that happened in 1864, not in Mississippi, but I think had a tremendous influence on what happened here, and when the end, we knew it was coming. And one of those events was the re-election of Abraham Lincoln. I think we're all familiar with that situation. Very possible McClellan becomes president. They may just let the South go and the war would end. That's it. But we all knew that Abe Lincoln wasn't going to give up. He would not quit. He would fight to the very end and shoot the last bullet. And the South didn't have as many bullets as the North. I don't know how many of you are familiar with Bannerman. He was a surplus buyer at the end of the war, and he bought millions of projectiles and made an island in the Hudson River to build his castle on. And when you looked at the inventory of what he bought from the U.S. Army, he bought more than the U.S. Army shot during the war. So they literally could have fought the war twice and not had to make any more. So when the populace of the United States said, we're backing Lincoln, we're going to have Lincoln continue to be our president, I think that sent a strong signal to everyone that this is not going to go away. It's just going to continue on and on and on, and Lincoln will push it to the very last day. Another event that happened that I think was an influence is our friend Uncle Billy Sherman going right through the heart of the South. And I think he demonstrated that he could take an army march through the South, destroy all of the food products that were available, and there was nothing that the South could do to stop them. And, I think the Sherman comes up a lot of his sometimes hatred in the South and his tactics. But I sometimes wondered if what he did was no different than dropping a bomb on Hiroshima. He made it so terrible for the civilian population that they would not continue on. And when the civilian population can't support the army, you're in trouble. You're in trouble every time. And we can see that in the state of Mississippi. We can't feed our children. We can't feed the wives that are at home. And destitute has set in by 64. So the idea of the beginning of the end, I truly do believe, did start in 1864 in Mississippi. And I want to put in one more little artillery thing. If I could bring this picture up. We were going to have a screen come down. Can that screen come down? We're going to hit Jack in the head.
You'll have to step aside there, Jack.
And what picture is a shameless promotion for the Starkville Civil War Arsenal. But what you're going to see, what I want to talk about just a little bit, lets you know where the Army was at this time. By magic, a picture will jump up there at some point. And what you're going to look and see is a 4-horse artillery hitch. 4 horses that are hooked up in the museum. But what is the significance of a 4-horse hitch? Standard procedure in the 1860s was a 6-horse hitch. The Confederacy had shortages of horses. They had shortages of harness, the manpower to operate them. So you saw what was a standard procedure is these 4-horse artillery hitches. Here we go. Thank you. It's a little distorted, but that's what you'll come and see if you come to the Starkville Civil War Arsenal. There's a lot of things you'll see, but this is the most recent. I have 6 employees now at the Starkville Civil War Arsenal. There's 2 of them right there, Private Dexter and Private Owens, and all the mannequins are now being named after people that have been passed away, that were either part of the museum or very instrumental in helping me get the museum going. So I would encourage you to come to the Starkville, see the Grant Museum, go to the Lincoln Gallery, and come to the Starkville Civil War Arsenal. But thank you very much. I'm going to turn this back over to Jack.